Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.
And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Michuta.
And welcome, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful's Apologetics Dojo, and it's great to be with you today as we, it's time to work out, time to exercise our mental capacities so that it can be used as a tool for our Lord to explain, defend, share the faith with clarity, charity, and confidence. Great to be with you. Got a very, very good show in store for you today, especially for those who are interested. Maybe you're just getting into defending the faith, being an apologist, or maybe you've done it a while and you would like to maybe start a group at your local parish. Get some like-minded Catholics to pull together, to study together, train others to defend the faith. One of the questions I often am asked is, how do you start such a group? Is there a textbook? Is there a class? Where do you go to start your own apologetics group? Well, basically, today we have Ken Litchfield coming on the program. He's first time on the show. I'm sure he's not going to be the last time either. And he wrote this book. It's called How Old Is Your Church? Here, I'm holding it up for the live stream people. An introductory guide to Catholic apologetics. And he kind of did the homework for you so that you have a text, a manual introduction that you could use to not only train yourself, but to train others in how to understand, defend the Catholic faith. And lest I forget, let me give my shout-outs, as I always do, to all of you watching live stream on Facebook and YouTube. Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. I also want to welcome all of you listening on radio around the country and also around the world via podcast. That always amazes me. Whenever I get emails from Europe, from all over, it's just cool to know that the dojo is quite large and it could hold many different people from many different countries. So we're glad to have you on board. And you might be thinking, wait, hold on, a podcast? How can I get a hold of podcast? Well, guess what? You can download podcast of Hands-On Apologetics via our phone app or also our flagship website. And that is either through iPhone or whatever. You could download the app, or you can go to the website, which is virginmostpowerfulradio.org, and there you can access the program and all sorts of other goodies. So, what else do we have? Well, as always, we have our Finding the Fallacy segment where we train ourselves to think critically. And that is, by the way, the proof of assertion is our Finding the Fallacy for today. And we also meet an early church father, because the early church fathers are so important to give evidence that, yes, the Catholic faith goes back all the way back to the beginning. And today's early church father is a biggie, and I think someone that probably most of you are already familiar with is St. Ambrose of Milan. Although you might know him, you might not know his background. So we'll go into the background in a couple seconds and learn a little bit about St. Ambrose. And as always, if you have a question for Ken Litchfield on the other side of the break, give us a call at 888-526-2151. That is 888-526-2151. And I should also I actually already mentioned the emails. If you want to send us an email, maybe you have a question, maybe you're in a situation that you're not quite sure what to do, or who knows, maybe you're having great success or you're having a lot of difficulty. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your email at questions@handsonapologetics.com. That is the official dojo mailbox. It flies through the internet into my mailbox. And yes, the emails are piling up, and who knows, maybe we'll do a Dojo Mailbox show in the near future. Never know. All right, so without further ado, why don't we jump into our Finding the Fallacy? Our Finding the Fallacy for today is the proof by assertion. Sometimes this is also known as by the Latin ipse dixit. Basically, it is because I say so. What is the proof by assertion? Well, it's also, by the way, known as a proof by repeated assertion. It's an informal fallacy in which a proposition is repeatedly restated regardless of contradiction. And this fallacy is sometimes a form of rhetoric used by politicians. It's also used in debates and even for filibusters. And there's more of a psychological effect with this particular fallacy than anything else. Sometimes if somebody repeats the same thing over and over again, we tend to think that there must be some substance behind it, because otherwise no one would be so doggedly, affirming something over and over again. When in fact, there really is no connection between the two. Just because something is repeated often just simply means that it is popular, or perhaps the person is just doggedly holding on to that proposition even though it may have been debunked or refuted or contradicted. So, this is very easy to find, of course, if you keep hearing the same thing repeated over and over. It's very common in debates. If you're a debate junkie, actually I'm kind of a recovering debate junkie. I don't listen to as many debates as I used to. But if you listen carefully, you'll find lots of debates where someone will bring up a proposition and the other person will just hammer it. He will completely dismantle it so it's really not tenable. But then a few minutes later, the assertion's made again as if nothing happened. And that would be the commission of our finding the fallacy for today, which is the proof by assertion. So there you go, folks. Keep your eyes and ears open for that, especially when election year. You got to be beware of all these little tricks and things that politicians will use as smoke screens. So just good to know. Why don't we jump to something better than that? Let's jump to the Meet the Early Church Father, who, like I said, is St. Ambrose of Milan. And when was St. Ambrose born? Well, guess what? It's kind of up in the air. The best evidence for dating Ambrose's birth comes from his letter 59 to Severus, where he states that he was 53 years of age and is suffering from barbarian outbreaks in the calamities of wartime. Some regard the letter to be referencing a war that happened in 387 A.D. With Maximus the Usurper, and that would place his date of birth at 333. Others regard it as the war that broke out in 393. Boy, I'm mixing up my numbers today. Let's see, which would date his birthday to 339 or 340. The latter dating seems to have a better part of the argument at the present time. This is Jurgen's Faith of the Early Fathers, by the way. And but it's by no means close, so we're not really sure. We think it's probably sometime around 333 A.D. He was born in Treves, and Ambrose was the son of a Praetorian prefect of Gaul. His father died young, and Ambrose's widowed mother returned to Rome with her 3 children. Ambrose's sister, Marcellina, took a veil of consecrated virgin in Rome, and his brother Satyrus followed in his father's footsteps, both by occupying a high civil post and also by dying young. Ambrose was trained both in rhetoric and in the legal profession. In about the year 370 A.D., he was made consul of Liguria and Emilia, and his official residence was Milan. Now, the bishop of Milan at that time was an Arian. Now, Arians are Catholics who held to a heretical belief that the Son was created by the Father. There was a time when the Son was not. And so, therefore, the Son is somehow lesser than the Father. So the bishop at that time in Milan was an Arian, and he died. The election of his successor witnessed considerable violence between the Arians and the Catholic parties in the area, in which St. Ambrose intervened. Now, here's the funny part, folks. So this, violence breaks out between the Arians and the Orthodox Catholics, and Ambrose steps in and kind of works out a kind of peace, and then only to find himself to be the unexpected choice of both parties for the bishop. Now, at the time, he was only a catechumen, but he finally yielded to the pressure and was consecrated Bishop of Milan on December 7th, 374 just a week after his baptism. St. Ambrose was an exemplary bishop both in his public and his private life. Jurgen says that his dogmatic and scriptural writings show no great originality. He basically heavily was influenced by Greek predecessors, but his moral and ascetical writings were quite independent. And it is here that he is at his best. Apart from these works, he also had extraordinary importance in pastoral theology, which marks him as perhaps the most brilliant mind of his time. He's remembered particularly for having succeeded to prevent the restoration of the statue of Goddess of Victory to the Senate chambers, a pagan altar which Gratian, the emperor, had removed in 382. And having successfully ordered the Emperor Theodosius to do public penance after his massacre in a consequence of a revolt, which 7,000 people in Thessalonica were murdered in 390 A.D. On a popular level, he's best known as the author of hymns, and several of which are recited in the Liturgy of the Hours. And his name is given to a style of plain song known as Ambrosian chant, which is preserved in the Liturgy of the Milanese, or the Ambrosian Rite. As he lay dying on his bed on a porch, several Ambrose deacons, standing at a distance, were whispering who might succeed him in Milan. When the name Simplician was mentioned, Ambrose, as if taking part in the discussion, which he ought not to have been able to hear anything at all at such a great distance, cried out in a loud voice, "Old but good, old but good." And when he died in 397, Simplician took his office. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Meet the Early Church Father for today, St. Ambrose. And coming up on the other side of the break, we're going to be talking with Master Apologist Ken Litchfield about, I guess you could say, introducing yourself to apologetics. Stay tuned, everybody.
This is Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio. This March, VMPR, in association with the Catholic Resource Center, will be hosting a special conference for the Adoramus Society. Adoramus at the Triduum, a conference on the spirituality of the Triduum liturgies, featuring speakers Father Joseph Fessio, Dr. Anthony Lillis, and Christopher Karstens, addressing such topics as developing a liturgical spirituality, the spirituality of Holy Thursday, the spirituality of Good Friday, and the spirituality of the Paschal Vigil and Easter season. It all takes place March 14, 2020, at the historic Sacred Heart Chapel at 381 West Center Street, Covina, California, 91723. You can register online at vmpr.org or call now at 877-526-2151 to reserve your seat today for Adoramus at the Triduum. Hebrews 11:3 says, "By faith we come to understand." According to St. Augustine, understanding is the reward of faith. Therefore, seek not to understand that you may believe, but believe that you may understand. May God grant us a strong living faith in Him and His divine plan of salvation, and help us to believe so that we may understand.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show, and they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. Hands-on Apologetics. And that's what the show's all about. It's hands-on apologetics, learning how to share, defend the faith. Many of you might be beginning apologetics, and you're probably wondering, well, how do I get started? Or maybe you want to light a fire in your parish, so you want to start a group, apologetics group, to help train other parishioners in how to explain, defend the faith. Well, to help us work through that, a person who's done a lot of study is a new friend, Master Apologist Ken Litchfield. Ken is a lifelong Catholic and a member of Holy Family Parish in Memphis, Michigan. He serves as financial secretary for All Saints Memphis Knights of Columbus Council. And after reading the Left Behind books, he started studying the Catholic faith more deeply. And the end result, and we're going to talk about that whole process, is that he is apologist in his own right. He's answered questions on the Catholic Answers call-in show. He serves as a moderator and contributor to our good friend John Martinoni, the Blue Collar Apologist Facebook site, Bible Christian Society. He's contributed on many other Facebook pages as well. He's published articles for the Coming Home Network and also Catholic 365 website. In 2018, he published his first book called, and for those who are watching live stream, you'll be able to see the cover here. It's called How Old is Your Church? An Introductory Guide to Catholic Apologetics. And Ken Litchfield, welcome to Hands on Apologetics.
Hi, Gary. I'm really glad to be on your show. Been a big fan for a long time.
All right. Yeah. And so you listen to the show and you still want to be a guest.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
I really appreciate, your Finding the Fallacy segment and the Church Fathers. I'm familiar with a lot of them, but, you introduced like all the guys from Jurgens, and a lot of them I haven't heard of. So I learned from you and lots of other people too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. So, Ken, how did you get
binge listen to your shows?
A binge listener. That's that's a scary thought. If you could just kind of like fast forward through the parts where I talk, it'll be a fantastic show. So maybe we should work on like an edited version of the show. But, Ken, I'm so glad that we got together because I want to hear your story about how you got interested in apologetics.
Okay. Well, I make my living regularly as a car restorer, but I found that, instead of listening to music, I could listen to other stuff while I'm working. And so I started listening to, YouTube videos and things like that. And my son read the Left Behind books, and he introduced me to them. And so I read those. Actually, I listened to them. And that made me interested about the rapture. And so I started digging into that. And Scott Hahn and Tim Staples saved me from falling into the rapture trap of actually believing in it. Yeah. And then they led me to, they mentioned like the Church Fathers, and so I was curious about them. And then I learned about other Catholic apologists and just started listening to their stuff. And, I found, Steve Ray, Jimmy Akin, tons of other guys. And so I started making YouTube playlists of those guys, and then I would listen to their stuff. And so I built up a library of knowledge in my head that way.
Right.
And then
you did something that a lot of my friends didn't do. Is I know growing up, a lot of my friends, when they encountered anti-Catholic stuff or non-Catholic material, they just accepted it. They never bothered to look to see what does the Catholic Church have to say. Are there answers to this? They just kind of went ahead with it. But you made the right turn and actually started to dig in and see, well, is there a response to these claims?
Mm-hmm. A lot of people accept things on face value, especially like cradle Catholics that don't really know what we believe and why we believe it.
Right.
And so when you actually dig into the Catholic faith, you find out it's very logical. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're listening to podcasts, you're learning, you're finding all these things, and you got a huge playlist while you're restoring cars. That's awesome.
Yeah. If you go to my YouTube channel, I have like over 200 playlists of lots of different things. Almost all of them are Catholic apologetic related.
Nice.
And,
nice. So,
I listen to.
Go ahead.
I listen to like church history lectures, from college professors, 2 Catholic, 2 Protestant, and 1 Eastern Orthodox. So I got a wide variety of versions of church history. Because if you just follow one person, you can fall into the trap of thinking that they know everything. I try to learn from a lot of people because you get more depth of knowledge that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, that's cool. So you're studying. When did you start feeling that maybe I should do more than just simply, train myself? When did you start thinking about presentations and, actually, teaching apologetics?
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. I started taking what I knew and kind of compiled it into, I think it was like a 10 or 11 page paper of early church history and things like that. And I contacted the DRE at my parish, and she hooked me up with a new convert at our parish who was running our evangelization outreach. And so we got together and we did some presentations for our church then. The first one I gave was on the rapture, and then the second one was on the Jewish roots of Christianity and early Christianity, like the first 500 years of Christianity. And then I started, I got a Facebook page, and I found out that there was a sort of different Christian sites, and I would like those pages, and then people would be asking questions or challenging the Catholic faith. And because I knew, so much history of Christianity, I was able to provide answers to their questions or challenges and references to how early the church, taught the Catholic interpretation of Scripture.
Okay.
And then Catholic 365, they were looking for authors, so I started posting some of my writings to their pages. And that was the other thing, in answering questions on Facebook, I would save my answers, and I started building up a library of stock answers for questions, and I now have over 150 stock answers, so saves me a lot of typing, where I can just cut and paste them into the question.
Yeah.
And the other thing about Facebook is they limit you to 8,000 characters in your answer, so you have to be thorough and concise. Right. So you can actually get it on there, otherwise your answer will be just thrown out.
Nice. So they're all pared down to just the perfect size to fit everything in, but you don't have to cut out any essential material because of the word limit. Right. Yeah.
I would make longer answers, but they wouldn't fit, so then I would have to edit them down, and I saved the longer versions, and maybe I'll put those into an intermediate apologetics book someday.
Nice. Yeah, very good. That's a really interesting forum for defending the faith is social media, Facebook conversations, because there's an awful lot out there. I mean, there's so many people that wouldn't ask another person face to face, but they will go on Facebook and challenge the faith or say, I never understood what the church believes. And so that's very fruitful area to be defending the faith is online. Are there any particular difficulties doing that? Is it easier to lose your temper, perhaps, or?
Yeah, there are other Catholic apologists that do get temperamental, and because it can be very frustrating when you give a good explanation and it still gets rejected, and it's only by God's grace and a lot of patience that I don't get frustrated. I simply offer, the Catholic side and the Catholic reasons, and, if they accept or reject it, that's on them. But I feel like my obligation is to present the truth, and, I leave their judgment up to God. I don't, I don't
very good.
cry if they don't accept my reason. And I, hope that somebody else might read it later on and have their faith either strengthened or, come to the Catholic Church.
So
I leave that part up to God.
Absolutely, and that's where it should be. It's very. I try to stay away from that just because it's so time consuming. But you're very smart to make these like apologetic package of like prepackaged responses. That really saves a lot of time. Retyping and repeating things that you've said and done like millions of times before. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. And, every once in a while there'll be something new that comes up, and I'll have to type it out one time, and then I save it, and
there you go.
In the library then for the next person.
Yeah. So you also was helping out with the Bible Christian Society Facebook page also.
Yeah. John did some a debate with some guy, I don't remember exactly who, but expected like a lot of new members, and I was invited to become a moderator on that page.
Nice.
And I became familiar with John's work early on, and I listen to his stuff all the time while I'm doing yard work and stuff around the house. So I've learned a lot from him as well as others. And so it's been an honor to work with John on his page, just like it's an honor to be on here with you.
Yeah, well, the honor is all ours. This is I think it's right up your alley because it's hand-on apologetics. It's getting in the trenches and discussing the faith. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. But we got a lot more to talk about on the other side of the break. We're talking with master apologist Ken Litchfield about getting into apologetics, and we're going to also talk about his book, How Old Is Your Church? An Introductory Guide to Catholic Apologetics. Stay tuned, folks. More to come on the other side of the break.
We finally did it. We have a Catholic Mental Health Conference on April 25th, 2020, here at the Sacred Heart Chapel with Dr. Louis Sandoval. He's going to be speaking on the basics of mental illness versus what we consider normal. Number one, he's going to go on the basics of mental illness versus what we consider normal. Second hour, depression, anxiety versus oppression and obsession. The third hour, bipolar disorders. Oh my gosh, infestation and possession. He's going to talk on mental health with the spiritual aspect. Number 4 talk will be on drug use, altered mental status versus demonic influence. I want to hear that talk. I hope you do too. Go to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call us at 877-526-2151. The date is April 25th, 2020. Be there by calling 877-526-2151. God bless you. This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And here's an easy way to support us by going to smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center or Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And when you log in your Amazon account and you purchase products A portion of it will go right back in supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio, and it doesn't cost you a dime. I want to thank you ahead of time because that supports us year-round. May God bless you and your family. Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome back, everybody. We are chatting with Master Apologist Ken Litchfield about how he got into apologetics, and also we're going to talk about his book, How Old Is Your Church? An Introductory Guide to Catholic Apologetics. And Ken, you were explaining how you were kind of got familiar with the Left Behind series, which made you dig into the Catholic faith, and you started learning all this stuff, and then eventually you went out, you were doing talks, you're studying. Then you went into Facebook, dealing with answering questions on Facebook, social media. We mentioned John Martinoni's Bible Christian Society Facebook. But that's not all. You also have contributed also to the Coming Home Network. Marcus Grodi is a good friend of the show. How did that come about?
Let's see. Well, I found out about their ministry, the Coming Home Network, through watching Journey Home programs, which is another great way to learn about the Catholic faith and, how people from other faith traditions, come to connect with the Catholic Church. And like on my YouTube channel, I'll have like playlists, for different faith traditions, and I'll start out that playlist with converts from that faith tradition. So nice. You get to learn about that faith from converts, and then I'll have, stuff on there, actually from people of that faith tradition too. So you can get some more in-depth information on, why they believe what they believe.
Yeah, very good.
But on the Coming Home Network, they have a place where you can share your information, and then also answering questions for converts there.
Okay.
And also on Facebook, there's a Catholic convert Facebook page that I recently became a part of, and I'm answering questions for those folks too.
Great. Yeah,
so
wonderful.
After a while, I wanted to put some of my writings into a book, but I had to figure out what to put in there. And again, I already had concise chapters, but I wanted to put them into a book. And at first, I just kind of put it into a booklet format made with a Word program. But it costs a lot of money to print them out individually. And somebody turned me on to Amazon Publishing, where you can upload your manuscript and have it printed for a whole lot less money.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
very good.
But all my writings are, designed for the average Catholic in the pew, not for theologians. I learned from, great theologians, but I write in using simpler language that doesn't have a lot of theological terms. And the most uncommon term that I use is the Didache, and a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's like the earliest Catholic catechism.
Yeah.
And so I mention that when I, write it in a chapter or essay or whatever. And I found on Facebook, a lot of people like my writings because they're easy to understand.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and that's, I was able to read through your book, and that's one thing that really stands out is that this is very accessible to someone who probably has no information or very little information about their faith. So this is perfect for a beginner because it's very basic, it's very clear, and it's not technical at all. And, you know, I have to give you kudos, Ken, because that is the hardest style of writing. It's easy to get technical and use all the jargon, but to break it down so that it's very simple, you know, that takes a lot of skill.
Thanks. You know, a lot of people have told me that, you know, I have a way of explaining things simply, and using, you know, common language, not, you know, fancy words that people don't know very well and get confused right away.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
My goal in writing the book was to, you know, get the basic information to other cradle Catholics and converts that don't know why we believe what we believe. You know, there's a lot of people that just go to church on Sunday because, well, we're supposed to do that because we're Catholics, and they don't know why, and they don't know what is really going on there, just that they go there. So I wanted people to, you know, cradle Catholics to be able to understand the faith and why we do what we do. And then also, like, you know, for converts who might be getting questions from their people of their past faith tradition, you know, it's like, well, why are you becoming Catholic? Because they believe in this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And then they would have an explanation to give their, you know, questioners so that, that, you know, it's from the Catholic side, using the Catholic scripture references that are relative to how we understand things, because most Protestants don't know that there's a Catholic answer for all of the misinformation they've been taught about the Catholic Church through their faith tradition.
Yeah, and that's true for cradle Catholics too. I mean, the catechesis has been so poor over the last few decades that you know, since they never heard an explanation given in catechesis, they just assume that there is no explanation. So, like I said, you know, like earlier, when they encounter something like the Left Behind series, they don't even think, well, maybe I should look into there's an answer, because they might say, well, I went to catechism for 8 years, and I never heard them talk about this, so the church probably doesn't have any opinion on it.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the Catholic Church doesn't really have an official teaching or interpretation of the Book of Revelation.
Right.
So, you know, anybody can give an explanation of the Book of Revelation, and there is no specific Catholic answer, but, you know, like everything else in the Catholic faith, there's parameters on what you can teach or understand about things in the Bible and the Catholic faith. It's not so dogmatic that, you know, this is what we believe and this is only what you can believe. There's like a playing field, a football field or a soccer field, and you can, you know, develop an understanding within that field without moving out of bounds and getting penalized.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's there's certainly a lot of work just in-house with a lot of poorly catechized Catholics, but also, you know, those outside the church that they really do want to hear what the Catholic Church has to say about things. And so, yeah. So as you were, you know, putting together the book and stuff, were you able to, what do I want to say? As you're sharing the book in your parishes, was that pretty much what you encountered, that most Catholics are ill-formed and this is kind of new things to them? Or, you know, what was the reaction?
Well, like at our parish, when I did the presentation on early church history, mm-hmm. And the Jewish roots of the Catholic faith, you know, it was something new to the parishioners, and people didn't, you know, they don't know that much about the history of the Catholic Church. And in our modern times, you know, with thousands of Protestant churches, you know, most people don't know the difference between the different Christian faith traditions and why they should be Catholic as opposed to, you know, a Baptist or a Lutheran or a Methodist or an evangelical or whatever, you know, because we all just love Jesus. But, you know,
yeah.
As soon as you move beyond that point, you know, like how are you saved and, does it matter if you sin after you're saved and things like that? Most people don't know what really matters. And I'm from a small town, where there's one Catholic church and 5 Protestant churches, and they can't even agree on when to baptize and what baptism does. So how do you know what's true?
Right. Yeah. Now, when you were doing these lectures, did you get any non-Catholics come to attend, or was it all Catholics?
Let's see. Nobody stood up and said, "I'm a non-Catholic." So.
Right. Yeah, that's typical, even if they were there. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because that's an interesting situation. You're in a small town, and I've been to Memphis, and they're surrounded by Protestant churches. So it's interesting because there's an opportunity for evangelism in that small circle that you wouldn't see, say, in a big suburb or in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, our church is, kind of well known around town. We work with other churches on the food bank, and when we got a new pastor a few years ago, he actually went around town to all the businesses to introduce himself.
Nice.
And, being in a small town, pretty much everybody is friendly.
Yeah.
We have the First Baptist Church that is also on Main Street, and every once in a while the pastor there will post a anti-Catholic saying or whatever on his sign out there. Mm-hmm. But, other people just, look at it and laugh and move on.
Oh, that's an interesting situation in and of itself. And, so you're dealing mostly with, poorly catechized Catholics, but, you also have, because people, what do I want to say? Christianity has become so diffused with so many different denominations that it seems like everything's just an idea or a position. So when you dive into the history of the church, that's really where you see the distinctiveness of why Catholicism's true, isn't it? It's historical roots.
Right. All the different Protestant denominations and the Catholic Church, we all have an interpretation of the Bible. But the key that the Catholic Church has that these other Protestant churches don't have is an interpretation of the Bible that actually goes back more than 500 years. Right. We have the original interpretation of the Bible before we assembled the Bible.
Yeah. Very good. Very well said. We're chatting with Master Apologist Ken Litchfield, and the book is How Old Is Your Church? And more to come on the other side of the break, folks. Stay tuned.
Welcome, Daniel. You're on the line. What's on your mind, brother?
Hi, I just wanted to share a testimony about Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I had a buddy at work who, he's a lukewarm Catholic guy, and I wanted him to start listening to the Terry and Jesse show, so I kept telling him to download the app, and he kept putting me off. So one day, I grabbed his phone, and I downloaded the app for him. I went on vacation, and I kept telling him to listen to it. He was kind of put me off. I came back from vacation. He comes to my cubicle, and he says to me, "Hey, man, I've been listening to Terry and Jesse's show, and it's great." And it's made a big impact in his life. The guy, he's going to weekly adoration a couple times a week. He goes to the Mass in the morning. Mm-hmm. He's an on-fire Catholic, and he promotes the Terry and Jesse show on the Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Daniel, what a testimony, and I want to encourage our listeners to get those cards by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org and do what Daniel's doing. Go out and spread the faith by inviting people to listen to Virgin Most Powerful. Daniel, thanks for your testimony, brother. God love you.
You're welcome.
Jesus said in Luke 17, "When you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are unprofitable servants. We have only done our duty.'" According to St. John of the Cross, God is pleased with the little deeds we do in secret. He takes more pleasure in these than in a multitude of grand works that we may do out of the desire to be seen by others. May God help us to do the things that please Him, and not just to appear great in the eyes of others.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE, US 1.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
Welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Master Apologist Ken Litchfield, and the book is How Old is Your Church? An Introductory Guide to Catholic Apologetics. You can get that at Amazon.com. Ken, let me ask you a question. It's been on my mind ever since I saw this book. My good friend Dan Egan loves to wear Catholic T-shirts, and there's one where the front says, "How old is your church?" And in the back there's a chart with all the different denominations and the dates they were founded. Did that inspire you for the book, or was this something that it just kind of came out of thin air?
It's something that, kind of came to me. Being like a history nut, looking for the historical Christianity, and like Cardinal Newman said, to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant, because when you go back in time, you only end up with the Catholic Church. You don't end up with Lutheranism or the Presbyterian Church or Baptist, even though the Baptists try to claim that they go back that far by claiming the various heretical sects that that taught what they don't believe anyway,
right.
But they try to claim them as their historical roots. When you keep going back, you only find the Catholic Church, and when you read the writings of the second-generation Christians, you find out they're Catholic. So, there's only one church to choose when you dig deep.
Yeah, that's a great way to start your book, because you start with a chart. I love charts. And, it's like, where's Waldo? Lots of people, like I have friends who are Baptist who claim that the Baptist Church existed back with John the Baptist. They actually see him as their founder. I don't know how that works, since, that was before Christ, but nevertheless, did you design this book to be, I know we already talked about that it's just a general book to help introduce Catholics to apologetics, but, reading it, Ken, it seems to me like this would be a great book if you're going to start like an apologetic study group at church, because it's very simple, very concise, and you hit all the right notes, where a beginner should begin.
Right. It's laid out, to take a person from a pagan to the end times, and each chapter can be read individually. So you can open up the book, go through the table of contents, and find out what you're wondering about, and start there. Or, if you can give it to somebody who's a non-believer and let them start from the beginning, because, I start out with, why you should be a Christian. Or if they're a convert, they can look on the chart and see when their church got started. And, that's another thing. None of the Protestant churches out there have an explanation for where the Bible came from.
Yes.
They all start with the Bible, and the guy that founded their church, his interpretation of the Bible.
Yep.
But
yeah,
none
that's
of them
very
have
good.
a historical record on how they assembled the Bible.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's something that's probably one of the first things the Catholic apologists ought to know is, where did the Bible come from? Why, what's the function of the Bible? How do you interpret the Bible? Those questions.
And that's why I have a chapter on, it's a short history of the Bible. I have an 11-page history on it also, that goes from the beginning, all the way to modern times, and, how we have our modern translations.
Great.
But I didn't put that part in the book.
Okay.
It's each chapter is only 3 to 5 pages long, so that, you can read each one in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that would be perfect for a session, maybe for an hour, hour and a half, read the short section and then kind of work through it, maybe dig into it, have questions, answers. I mean, that's perfect for like a parish course.
Right. And each chapter refers you to chapters in the Bible because, if you just pluck verses out of the Bible, you can string verses together to say whatever you want them to say. So in my book, I refer people to chapters in the Bible. So if you're starting an apologetics club at your church, you can get the book, and then you'll be working on a chapter, and it'll refer you to a chapter in the Bible. So when you get to that part, and I say that, this chapter says this, you can open up your Bibles, read that chapter, get the whole context of that chapter, and then move on with the book. And I often refer to the same chapter over and over. There's a few Bible quotes in there that I use from the New American Bible, which is the Bible that's read in church. I personally prefer the RSV CE, Revised Standard Version. But I quote from the NAB because that's what people hear at church, and they'll be more familiar with that writing.
Right. Yeah. Very good. And I was able to watch one of your lectures on YouTube. You made a great point that you just put the chapters or sometimes the chapter and verses, but you rarely quote the text because you want them to actually open up their Bibles and read it. I thought that was brilliant.
Exactly. People, they get the Bible read to them at Mass, part of it, but, to open up and actually read a whole chapter of the Bible or a whole book of the Bible is so much better. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So you have where the Bible comes from. You go through all sorts of theological topics, what Protestants and Catholics share, where they differ, Calvin, Luther, different sides of theology, Bible verses, early church fathers. You got a lot here, and it's not very long. How many pages is it? It's under 100 pages.
It's basically 100 pages, and I wanted to keep it small so that, people wouldn't be intimidated, and, because, I have 25 chapters in the book, basically, but each chapter in the book could be a whole book all by itself.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But, if you give somebody 25 books and tell them, well, this is what you need to know about the Catholic faith, they would say, well, I think I'll just stick with my evangelical church, okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, you did a great job just weeding that out. It's interesting you had a chart there on worship, the development of worship chart, which I thought was kind of a unique feature. I didn't expect to find it in there.
Yeah, that's been a popular item to show that, how early Christian worship developed out of the Jewish worship. And that was something I learned in one of my church history courses, how what Jewish worship looked like in the first century and how it, naturally evolved into Christian worship. Fortunately, Justin Martyr gives us a good description of Christian worship, and from about 150 AD, and then there's the modern Catholic worship, and so I developed a chart showing how, this part of Jewish worship is now described in 150 AD by Justin Martyr, and then how it matches up with what we do at Mass today. So it really helps people connect the dots. The only thing is, our liturgy of the Eucharist that we do after the liturgy of the Word. That actually comes from the mini Passover that the Jewish people would do on Friday nights before the Jewish Sabbath. They would hold like a mini Passover in their home.
Right.
And the liturgy of the Eucharist is an evolution of the Jewish Passover meal. So
Yeah, very good. Well, we only have a few more minutes left. So let's say if someone out there wants to start an apologetic club at their parish, how would they go about doing that?
Well, first you discuss it with your pastor. Got to get permission from the boss first.
Yes.
And then, you could get your pastor a copy of my book. Being a small book, it won't take them long to read it. And get his approval, and then you can get a copy of the book for everybody in the club, or you can advertise in your church bulletin that, we're going to start an apologetics club based on this book, right. And then, get people to show up, and then have everybody get a copy of the book. You can save a lot on shipping if you buy, 25 or 30 of them in a batch, than everybody having to buy their own and, pay $10 shipping or whatever,
right,
for each one that they get.
Yeah. And by the way, here's
$6 on Amazon.
Here's an advertising hack for everybody. If you're going to advertise the group, do not use the word apologetics, because no one knows what that word means except apologist. So put down defending the faith, sharing the faith, something like that. Don't put down apologetics club, or no one will come. Just a little FYI there.
One of the things I have done in the past about when people would be complaining about the Catholic Church, I start out with, well, as a Catholic apologist, first of all, let me apologize for the behavior of bad Catholics. Yeah. And then I proceed to give them an explanation about what the Catholic Church actually teaches.
Right.
Because
that's great.
People out there trying to defend and explain the faith don't always know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, okay, what else? What other resources? You have a apologetics playlist that you mentioned on YouTube. How do people access that?
They could just type in my name into YouTube and come to my channel, and then look at my playlists. There's over 200 of them. Almost all of them are apologetic related. And then, pick out the one that's most interesting to you. There's a show on EWTN called The Communion, and I assemble all those shows. Also John Martinoni's shows, Father Mitch Pacwa's shows, and then Catholic Answers. There's tons to listen to there. And just by listening to them answer other people's questions, you can learn how to answer questions well. And then also by listening to the church history playlists, and whatever you see on there that interests you, give that a listen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Sure thing. And at the end of my book has my email address. You can contact me there.
Awesome. Well, that's Ken Litchfield, ladies and gentlemen. Man, the hour is flown, but stay tuned. High Impact Catholic Talks coming at you with the Terry and Jesse Show. Man, it's already time to shut down the Midwest Command Center, turn off the dojo lights. I hope you enjoyed the program. I did. And I wish everybody has a great day. And God willing, we'll talk again tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.
In the 1990s, I lived and worked in Hollywood. But when my wife Betty's mom took ill, we relocated to Orange County. And it was during this time in our lives that I converted to Catholicism. Once my eyes were opened to the truth, I couldn't learn enough about the faith. But I had less free time than ever, especially with a long commute. That's when I discovered the real value of Catholic audio. Listening to cassette tapes transformed my daily commute into a miniature retreat. And that's the beauty of Virgin Most Powerful Radio today. Since the podcasts are archived, you can listen anytime on our smartphone app. I know how listening to Catholic audio can bring you closer to Christ and His Church. So I encourage you to visit the App Store or go to vmpr.org and download the app today. It just might change your life. I'm Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio.